Welcome to the Wife Stories YouTube channel. New video every day, and don't forget to subscribe. Here we go.
I stare at the empty closet. It's gaping, barren, like a mouth screaming without sound. Not so long ago, it was stuffed with her blouses, her dresses, the soft sweaters that smelled faintly of that floral perfume she used to wear before bed. Now there's nothing but dust and a single bent wire hanger, swaying back and forth each time I nudge the door. That hanger reminds me of bones. Dry, brittle, useless. I can't remember when exactly she moved her clothes out, or whether I was present at all when she did it. But I can remember, vividly, like it happened 2 seconds ago, her body. How I used to trace her curves when we were younger. Now that body belongs to a stranger. It might as well be behind museum glass. Untouchable, alien. I'm speaking for the record, as if this is all being taken down by someone in a windowless room. Maybe I need that formality. Maybe it's the only way I can keep my voice steady. Because inside, there's a tremor that won't quit, and it's not just emotional. It's in my bones, radiating out from my chest, sharp physical pain that clamps around my ribs and squeezes. I wish I could blame heartburn or a pulled muscle, but I can't. It's the ache of betrayal turned tangible, a vise around my body. The day I realized she had changed, that her body and her soul no longer reached for me, felt like a switch flipping in a dark room. I was holding a paperback copy of Solaris *, old book, old memories. She gave it to me decades ago, back when we were still young, fresh from college, brimming with ideas about life and love. I thumbed through that worn binding, letting the hush of those pages cradle me after a rotten day. Then a slip of paper fluttered out. I almost missed it, but the faint sound made me look. Her handwriting, in the margins, 3 lines. ***, I couldn't tell you. He promised he would leave. Forgive me if you can. ***, I could swear the temperature dropped. I read those words aloud, the syllables feeling jagged on my tongue. I reread the note again and again, as if those lines would rearrange themselves into some benign message, something that wouldn't tear me in half. But they never did. They were permanent. And she knew, she had to know, I would find them. Between certain pages, she'd highlighted a quote, ***, he forgive. And he died. ***, it was as though she were taunting me or begging me. Maybe both. My hands trembled. My heart roared like a furnace in my ears. I'd never before felt so aware of each breath. A part of me wanted to tear the page out, crumple it, burn it. Another part wanted to slump onto the floor and weep, but I didn't do either. I just stood there, so still I might have been a statue. An hour later, time had no meaning, but I recall the clock reading something beyond my usual comprehension. My daughter asked if she could practice piano. An ordinary question, a normal father-daughter moment, but I was so raw inside. I remember saying, "Sure." Then she teased me about it being my turn to play. We do that sometimes, fight over who gets the bench first, a silly family tradition. It's the kind of detail you'd think would warm your heart. But just then, my stomach churned like acid. I tried to smile, but my face felt like plaster. Then the phone rang. I can still hear that shrill old thing echoing around the living room. My daughter rushed for it. She always does. She's at that age where a ringing phone could be anything, an exciting invitation, a friend calling. I was in the doorway, half in the hall, half in the living room, when I heard his voice, calmer than I expected, almost gentle. He spoke quietly, but with confidence, the kind of voice that commands attention in a room. She pressed the phone to her chest and looked at me. "Dad," she whispered, "who is this?" "He said he wants Mom." I opened my mouth to speak. I couldn't. My mind was reeling, thrashing. "Just give me the phone," I managed. But before I could take it, Sarah, my wife, burst in, pale as a sheet. She snatched the phone, heard the voice, And within seconds, she clenched the receiver like it was a snake. Her eyes flicked to mine. Terror, guilt, fury. Then she screamed at the phone. "Get back here, you bastard." She hurled the phone against the couch, and the battery popped out, rattling across the hardwood floor. My daughter froze. I swear, I saw her shoulders tense up, the first sign of real fear I'd seen in that sweet girl. Sarah's cry still echoes in my head sometimes. Asterisk, "Get back here, you bastard." Asterisk, a command, a plea, some weird, furious meltdown that had an edge of longing. The phone lay there in pieces. I stared from the phone to Sarah, and she to me. I didn't leave. I just stood like a carved stone. Every muscle in my body was rigid. She tried to speak, but I watched as the words stuck in her throat. Then she did what any cornered soul might do. She turned on me. She spat out, "Why are you looking at me like that? You think you're so perfect." Her voice was trembling. Our daughter was still in the room, so that Jad was quiet, barely audible. But it cut me anyway. I didn't respond. I had no words in that moment. Something deep inside me had cracked open, bleeding. There was no anger rising to my tongue, just a heavy, nauseous hush. That was the day the final act began, though the story of her betrayal was older than that. If I were giving testimony on a witness stand, I'd say, asterisk, I suspected. I had glimpses, but I chose not to see. Asterisk, because that's what we do when we have families, mortgages, or routine. We cling to normal. We cling to asterisk, safe asterisk, to the patterns we've known for years. But safety can be the biggest illusion of all. The affair, I found out, had been going on for months. And I got the confirmation one night I came home late. Typically, Sarah told me she'd be out with colleagues, some marketing event for her job. Our daughter was at a friend's house for a sleepover. I remember the living room lights were off. The entire place was quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator. My body was stiff from a long day. As soon as I stepped inside, though, I felt something off, like the air had a different charge. Maybe the slightest whiff of cologne that wasn't mine. I called her name softly. No answer, but I heard faint shuffling from our bedroom. I walked carefully down the hallway, each footstep on the creaking board sending a jolt of adrenaline through me. My heart was pounding, and that physical pain started up again in my chest. I remember thinking, asterisk, don't do this. You don't want to see. Asterisk, but it was too late for denial. The bedroom door was partially open, enough for me to see silhouettes on the bed. Her voice was hushed, breathy, mingling with a low, masculine murmur. I could see them, two bodies, tangled in sheets, hers partially uncovered. The slope of her bare hip, his hand on her thigh. My vision blurred from the shock, but I caught the erotic arch of her back, her head thrown back as he whispered something that made her gasp. She looked nothing like the woman I married. She looked consumed by a hunger that had nothing to do with me. And for an insane moment, my mind played illusions. Asterisk, maybe it's just a dream. Maybe I'm asleep on the couch. Asterisk, but I couldn't wake up. I took an involuntary step forward. My shoes squeaked on the floor. Her eyes snapped open, meeting mine. She let out a strangled cry. Fear, guilt, a savage panic. The lover turned, his face half in shadow. But I recognized him instantly from a photo I once saw in her phone. Richard, a motivational coach or some such nonsense. He was naked to the waist, well-built, looking like he was in the middle of a private fantasy he never expected to be interrupted. She pulled the sheet over her chest, as if that could hide the obvious. The air around us crackled with the raw exposure of that moment. My gut twisted. I felt like my ribcage was about to snap. For the record, I didn't start screaming. I didn't punch him, though part of me wanted to tear him apart. I was empty. My voice died in my throat, and I turned and walked out of the bedroom. I remember hearing her footsteps behind me, calling my name, but I couldn't stop. My arms felt numb, like lead. I just needed air, Needed to escape the oppressive stench of sweat, lust, betrayal. Once outside, I vomited in the rose bushes we planted together a decade ago. My chest was on fire. When she emerged, wrapped in a robe, she tried to stammer an explanation. The words tumbled out half-formed. John, I can explain. It's not what you. I laughed, though it sounded more like a bark. Not what I think. Sarah, it's exactly what I think. She reached out to touch my arm, and I recoiled, stumbling back a step. Suddenly, I was hyper-aware of how real this was, how her hair still smelled of his cologne, how her cheeks were flushed from his touch, not mine. Asterisk, this is my wife, asterisk, I thought. Asterisk, or was. Asterisk, my entire body ached, as though I'd been beaten with a baseball bat. She stood there, silent, tears glistening on her cheeks, but not quite falling. Her lips parted. Then, as if by some reflex, she said, I'm sorry, but what? I hissed. You needed asterisk, more asterisk. You couldn't tell me your precious truths. The words tore from my mouth. How long, Sarah? How long have you two been sneaking around? She pressed her lips together, hugging the robe to her collarbone. The headlights of a passing car lit us both up momentarily, spotlighting this twisted tableau of husband and wife. She whispered, we never meet. I cut her off. Don't lie. You meant this. You chose it. Now get inside. I don't need the neighbors gawking. She swallowed, eyes darting around. Then she slipped back into the house, leaving me alone for a moment with the cool night air. I told myself to calm down, that I had to keep control, if only for our daughter's sake. But fury pulsed in my veins. My hands shook so violently I jammed them into my pockets to hide the tremor. Inside, he was gone, like a ghost. Maybe he dressed and bolted out the side door while we were in the front yard. Typical coward move, but I suppose I would have done the same in his place, running from the brewing storm. The bed was a mess of rumpled sheets, her perfume and his cologne saturating the air. I wanted to tear the blankets to shreds. Instead, I just stood there, staring, swallowing back this bitterness that tasted like bile. That was before I found the note in asterisk Solaris asterisk, because yes, that night, she begged me to keep it private, insisted she'd never see him again. She said whatever she thought might calm me down, or stop me from taking revenge. I'll end it, she promised. We'll fix this. I didn't believe her then. Part of me wanted to believe, but it was like banging on a locked door in pitch darkness. Weeks passed, or maybe months. I couldn't keep track. My chest burned constantly, like a deep bruise that never healed. We tried to appear normal around our daughter, but the cracks showed. Sarah avoided me in the mornings, left earlier for work. I avoided her at night, burying my face in the TV or a book until I drifted off on the couch. We barely touched, spoke only about groceries or schedules. Sometimes we argued in hushed, vicious tones. Other times we put on the mask of a cordial couple. We became proficient liars. And all the while, I felt the life draining out of me. Then the day of the phone call. The day I found that note pinned in my old paperback. Everything came crashing down. She wasn't done with him. She was asterisk, never asterisk, done with him. That note was her confession, and her twisted cry for me to understand. Or maybe for me to push her away. I'll never know. Because in the next weeks, after she spat that "get back here, you bastard," at the phone, she turned into a ghost in our house. She hovered around corners, stared at me with wide, frightened eyes, as if I were the threat. Our daughter noticed. She's not stupid. She could sense the tension, the silence. I began sleeping in the guest room. But sleeping is a loose word. I'd lie there with insomnia, adrenaline pumping through me as if I were bracing for a fight. Often, I'd have these flashes of memory, seeing Sarah's body arch under him, hearing her moan. My gut twisted in pain. My fists would clench, nails biting into my palms. More than once, I'd get up and pace. My reflection in the hallway mirror looked gaunt, older. The physical ache in my chest never left. Sometimes I pressed my hand to my sternum, thinking, asterisk, this is how men have heart attacks. Asterisk, meanwhile, she tried to talk to me. She wanted to explain. But her attempts at conversation were shot through with this forced cheerfulness, especially if our daughter was around. It was as if she were reading from a script labeled asterisk, happy wife asterisk, a script that I'd never agreed to. Whenever she'd say something in that bright, artificial tone, I'd give her the cold truth. Sarah, I know you're still talking to him, or don't lie to me. We both know you broke us. My voice was quiet but harsh, each sentence delivered like a punch. She'd recoil, look at our daughter, then fall silent. We both knew any real confrontation would tear the last threads of our family life to shreds in front of the child. That was how the next phase of our life began, this excruciating limbo. She tried to pretend normal, tried to arrange date nights, or insisted we should watch a movie together. Each time, I said no. I knew the truth. She was still drifting to him, physically or emotionally. The love, if that's what it was, between her and me had hemorrhaged out onto the floor the day I watched them entwined in our bed. All that remained was the echo of something. Or maybe we were just keeping up appearances for our daughter. But then there was that phone call, and her shriek, and the note in asterisk Solaris asterisk. All illusions ended. I remember sitting in the living room, our daughter asleep upstairs, the phone broken on the table, Sarah standing across from me with her arms folded tight. She said, in a trembling voice, "We need to talk, John. This is destroying us." I leveled my eyes at her. Asterisk no asterisk, you want to talk. She nodded. I don't want to lose our daughter. I don't want. You've already lost me, I cut in. So what's your plan? That I'll just bury this. Pretend it never happened. Her eyes glistened. I never wanted any of this. Then you shouldn't have spread your legs for him in my house, I said. Harsh, yes. But I was beyond civility. My words were like a blade, cutting through the facade. Her face twisted in pain. I felt a sick satisfaction. Then, just as quickly, I hated myself for it. She whispered, "I know I hurt you." I laughed, a sharp bark. Hurt me? Sarah, you ripped out every vow we made. Don't stand there and talk about heartbreak like it's an accident. She sank onto the couch. Please, sit with me. Her voice cracked, so I lowered myself onto the armchair. My chest felt like it was on fire again, that same throbbing in my sternum. I pictured my heart turning black, some rotting organ. She tried to speak, but her voice wavered. Finally, I said, if you're gonna beg for forgiveness, don't. That ship sailed. She rubbed her temples. It's not about forgiveness, she managed. He made me feel alive. I couldn't find a way to tell you. He told me he would leave his old life, move closer. I thought it was just. I needed something, John. I felt like I was drowning in routine. I know that's not your fault. Stop. I closed my eyes. I can't keep hearing you blame me for your choice. She exhaled shakily. I'm not blaming you. I'm telling you how it happened. If we talked before, if I'd said how unhappy I was, maybe I wouldn't have ended up in his arms. Do you hear yourself? I hissed. You're rewriting our marriage to justify screwing a man you barely know. I loved you. That might not mean much now, but I did. She wiped at her cheeks. I do love you, but it's complicated. I gave her a cold stare. No, it's simple. Love is a choice every day. You chose him. Now live with the consequences. She tried to say something else, but I stood up and walked away. My chest was screaming with that dull, wrenching tension. I ended the conversation on my terms, leaving her alone on the couch, face in her hands. In the following weeks, I functioned like a robot. I went to work, edited manuscripts, attended editorial meetings. I came home, cooked dinner for my daughter, and barely acknowledged Sarah. She hovered in doorways, looking like she wanted to speak. Sometimes she apologized. Other times she got angry. In one particularly heated moment, she spat, "You can't keep punishing me like this." I said I was sorry. I turned with a pot in my hand. "Sorry? You want me to pat your head and say it's okay? You want the same bed you defiled, the same life you shredded?" She flinched at that word, defiled. "But I meant it. You said you wouldn't leave," she whispered. "I won't," I answered. "You want to know why? Because my daughter lives here. And I'm not giving up my home. So you can stay here too, but we're done being man and wife." Silence. Then she whirled and left the kitchen. The door slammed behind her. I took a breath, tried to steady my trembling fingers, and continued cooking. Chicken, mashed potatoes, my daughter's favorite meal. I didn't taste a thing. The phone calls from *Kim* still came, but now Sarah answered them in hushed corners. Or so she thought. Sometimes I'd see her out by the garage, phone pressed to her ear, tears or anger on her face. I didn't eavesdrop. I didn't need to. The damage was done. One evening, after our daughter had gone to bed, I heard Sarah in the living room with the phone in her hand. Her voice was quiet but urgent. I caught pieces of sentences. "You said you would." "I know, but it's too late. I can't keep living like—" "No, don't say that." Then she hung up. She paced the living room, arms folded, shoulders shaking. When she noticed me standing in the hallway, she froze. "What do you want me to do, John?" She blurted out, raw desperation in her tone. "I can't fix this if you shut me out." I stepped closer. The only light was a small lamp behind her, casting an amber glow. I spoke slowly, as if pronouncing a verdict. "You already made your choice, Sarah. All that's left is waiting for me to make mine." She advanced, tears shining in her eyes. "Do you want me gone? Is that it?" I stared at her, at a face I used to know intimately. "I want you out of my heart," I said evenly. "Because that's what you burned when you took him into our bed. But if you mean physically gone from this house, no, not yet. Our daughter needs both of us, in some twisted sense." She sank to the couch, head in her hands, letting out a ragged sob. I watched without moving, my own emotions rolling like a storm inside me. Rage, pity, disgust, longing. Physical pain flared under my ribcage. I pressed my hand against it, tried to breathe. She heard my ragged inhale and looked up. "Are you okay?" she asked. "No," I said, and walked upstairs. On a Sunday afternoon, a couple of days later, we had a rare confrontation where she tried to act normal in front of our daughter again. She forced a bright tone, suggesting we all go out for a walk. Our daughter perked up at the idea. I could see the hope in her eyes, as if maybe this would be a turning point, a sign that Mom and Dad were okay. But I killed that hope the moment Sarah turned to me and said, "What do you think, honey?" In that cheerful voice, I responded, voice low but merciless, "You want me to pretend we're one big happy family. Sorry, that's not how this works." I looked at our daughter. "We'll talk later," I said softly. Then I left the room. My chest was throbbing again, but I refused to show any weakness. Later that night, I heard my daughter crying in her bedroom. That was one of the hardest moments for me. I approached her door, knocked softly, and said, "Can I come in?" She sniffled, said yes. She was on her bed, hugging her knees. Her eyes were red, a stuffed animal perched in her arms. I sat at the foot of her bed, careful with my words. What do you say to a 12-year-old who senses everything's falling apart? Mom and we're going through a rough patch, I said, understating the truth by a mile. But we both love you, okay? That's never going to change. She nodded, tears brimming. "Why are you so mad at her?" she asked. "Is it something she did?" My throat tightened. "It's complicated. But it's not your fault, sweetheart. Not at all." She leaned her forehead against her knees. "I hate it. I hate seeing you both like this." I gently placed a hand on her shoulder. "I know. I'm sorry." She let me sit there for a while, then said, "Are we still a family?" The question pierced me. I tried to find an honest answer. In the end, all I could say was, "I'm not leaving you, no matter what happens." She nodded, wiping her face with her pajama sleeve. "Okay." I kissed the top of her head and whispered, "Sleep, all right. Tomorrow we can talk more." She sniffled again and lay down. I left her room, feeling that ache in my chest intensify to the point I wanted to scream. Instead, I pressed my fist to my sternum and breathed, counting seconds. Asterisk stay calm asterisk, I told myself. Asterisk stay calm. Asterisk. Days dripped by in a tortured monotony. Each morning, I'd make coffee, she'd come downstairs, hair in a loose ponytail, eyes downcast, and we'd avoid conversation beyond, "We're out of milk." I'd head to work, carrying the knowledge that my home was a war zone, with no resolution in sight. She'd drive off to her marketing job. Our daughter would shuffle to school, shoulders weighed down by her parents' unspoken war. Richard, the other man, was still in the periphery. Every so often, he'd call, and she'd slip outside to answer. Once, I stepped into the garage while she was on the phone with him. She jolted when she saw me. I caught a snippet of him saying something about life's too short, and I can't stand waiting. She whispered something about I can't talk now, then hung up. We locked eyes in the fluorescent glare of that dusty garage. I almost said something savage about her being a liar, but I just walked out. No words came, none needed. Eventually, the tension simmered to a boil. One evening, I came home and found her in the living room with a half-packed suitcase. She looked up, eyes red, as if she'd been crying. "I'm going," she said. "I can't stay here like this, day after day, where you look at me like I'm poison." I stared at the suitcase. "Where do you plan to go?" "His place," she swallowed. "Maybe." I clenched my jaw. There was that spike of pain in my chest, tightening. "So that's it. You tear our family apart, and then you run off with him." She exhaled unsteadily. "I don't know what else to do, John. You said you wouldn't forgive me. You barely speak to me except to lash out." Her voice itched. "I can't fix this alone." "Try harder," I said bitterly, though I realized how cruel it sounded. My body felt like it was on the verge of collapsing. The idea of her leaving for good brought a swirl of conflicting feelings. Fury, relief, betrayal, fear, and what about our daughter? "She'll stay here with you for now," she whispered. "But I'll see her. We'll work out some arrangement. I don't want to hurt her, John. But we're hurting each other like this." Anger surged. "Oh, you don't want to hurt her. You should have thought about that before you spread your legs in our bed." That was the second time I used that phrase, and it felt vile on my tongue. But I couldn't stop the venom. She flinched as if I'd struck her. Good, I thought. Then a wave of guilt swelled. This was so far from any life I'd imagined for us. She sank onto the couch. I saw her shoulders tremble. She was sobbing quietly. I realized I had two choices: watch her leave, break the last illusions of a normal family, or try some desperate measure to keep her under this roof. But did I even want that? The question hammered in my mind. Asterisk, do I want her to stay? Asterisk, silence stretched. Finally, I found myself saying, "If you walk out that door, you end any chance of redemption with me." Even as I said it, I knew it was half a lie. There was no chance. We were done. Still, I had to say something. She nodded, tears streaking her cheeks, but she didn't move. We sat like that, locked in a standoff, until eventually she dropped her face into her hands and let out a long, ragged exhale. "I don't know what to do," she whispered. "I'm lost." I didn't comfort her. I couldn't. After a few minutes, she stood, closed the suitcase, and set it aside. "I'll stay," she said flatly, defeated. "For tonight. At least." I gave her a curt nod. She brushed past me, trailing her misery like a scent. In that moment, I realized I felt no triumph, just a deeper level of emptiness. Everything changed the following weekend. That was when the final confrontation happened, the one that ended all illusions and forced me to claim the only form of vengeance I had left. It started out quietly enough. I was in the kitchen, rummaging through the pantry, noticing how half the shelves were empty. We'd let groceries run low. The fridge was nearly bare too. She was upstairs, our daughter at a friend's place again. That's when I felt my phone vibrate. A text message. From an unknown number. It read, *, don't turn her pain into something worse. She needs your forgiveness. Richard. *, my hands shook. I reread that message 3 times, my anger spiking with every word. *, he's contacting me directly now. *, that smug bastard. My chest flared with that same tension, but now it spread into my arms, an actual ache that made it hard to breathe. Without thinking, I called the number. He answered on the second ring. Before he could say anything, I snarled, "How dare you text me about *, where do you get off?" He hesitated, then said calmly, "I'm sorry to intrude, John. I only want what's best for Sarah." "Don't say her name," I snapped. "You have no right." He sighed. "Look, I know I did you wrong. We didn't plan it. Stop talking." My voice was trembling with fury. "You think your fancy words will fix what you destroyed?" He was silent for a moment. Then, in a measured tone, he said, "I understand your anger, but Sarah's hurting, and she's torn. You want her to leave me. That's what you want." My heart pounded so hard I thought it'd burst. "You keep prodding her. Your calls, your texts, like you've got some claim on her. She's my wife." He paused again. When he spoke, his voice sounded unruffled. "Is she? I'm not sure she believes that anymore." My free hand tightened into a fist. I squeezed my eyes shut, tears burning behind my lids. "You're a vulture. Stay out of my home, out of my life, and out of my phone." He said something about how he cared for her, how he wasn't the enemy. But I hung up. My entire body was shaking. My breath came in ragged bursts. Then I heard her footsteps on the stairs. She called my name, tentative, fearful. I realized I'd been practically shouting. I spun around, phone still gripped in my hand. "He texted me," I hissed, voice quivering. "He's got the nerve to say you need my forgiveness, like he's your goddamn spokesman." She paled. "I didn't know he'd do that. I'm sorry." I advanced on her, ignoring the searing pain in my ribcage. "No more sorry. I've had enough. I want him gone from your life, or you leave. You can't have both." She opened her mouth, closed it. The silence said everything. My voice cracked. "You're still attached to him. Even now." She rubbed her arms, looking desperate. I'm not sure. I told him I can't keep talking. But part of me, John, I don't know how to stop feeling. I barked a laugh with no humor. "Feeling what?" "Lust, infatuation." Her face twisted in anguish. "It's not that simple." "Then let me make it simple for you," I growled. "If you talk to him again, if you so much as pick up his call, I swear to God, Sarah, you will be dead to me. More dead than you already are in my eyes." I saw something harden in her gaze. She looked at me for a long, beatless moment. Then she said quietly, "John, I already might be." We stood there, 2 ghosts in the same kitchen, the empty pantry behind me, as if mocking how starved we were. For love, for trust, for everything. That night, I decided on my course of action. It wasn't some wild, dramatic plan to physically harm them, though I'd fantasized about it. My revenge, if you can call it that, was to live in complete, icy silence, a refusal to grant her any emotional closeness, to be nothing more than a functional co-parent and occupant of the same house. That was it. Because the one thing she feared more than my anger was my indifference. She'd always dreaded being invisible, meaningless. Well, now I'd give her that in spades. I started the next morning. She tried to hand me coffee. I pretended she wasn't even in the room. At breakfast, I asked our daughter about her day, ignoring Sarah entirely. If Sarah spoke to me, I gave monosyllabic responses or turned away. In the evening, I cooked dinner, set 3 plates, but never once addressed her. She tried to break the silence with small talk. I didn't engage. I saw her unraveling, day by day. She'd linger in the kitchen, her eyes begging me to meet her gaze. I never did. If I had to speak to her, it was the cold truth. We're out of salt. The rent is due. Ask your mother, directed at my daughter. This went on for a week, maybe 2. She looked haunted, hugging herself in corners, chewing her lip until it bled. I felt that physical pain ease, ironically, as if the satisfaction of shutting her out soothed the ache in my chest. I was hollow, but at least the ache was distant, contained. One evening, a storm raged outside, thunder shaking the windows, rain drumming on the roof. I was reading in the living room, light turned low, while Sarah hovered in the doorway. I could sense her presence. Finally, her voice, trembling. "John, please, don't do this. I'm dying here." I closed the book, kept my eyes down. "You're the one who's done this, not me." She inched forward. "Yes, I know, but I'm sorry. I said it 1,000 times. Isn't there anything left? Any chance we can rebuild?" I inhaled, felt that old pain flare in my ribs. I set the book aside, stood up, and let the silence stretch until I saw tears well in her eyes. "Sarah," I said at last, voice sharp as broken glass, "did you stop seeing him? Are you done with him, once and for all?" She swallowed. "He called a few times, but I told him we need space." "That's not an answer," I said. "You either cut him off, or you don't." She trembled. "I'm trying." I nodded once, a gesture so small it was almost nothing. "Then keep trying. And if you fail, well, you know the price." She let out a half-sob, turned, and left the room. Thunder rattled the windows. For a moment, I stood there, feeling the surge of twisted triumph. Then that triumph curdled into shame. I forced myself to breathe, to remind myself I was doing this, because she brought us here. It all broke open a final time not long after. Our daughter went on a school overnight trip. Sarah and I were alone in the house. A storm front battered the city again. Another night of rain and thunder. She knocked on my guest room door. When I opened it, she was standing there in a simple t-shirt and sweatpants, hair damp from a shower, face pale. She looked vulnerable, lost. I braced myself for more pleas. Instead, she whispered, "We need to talk about the future. ** future. Or the lack of it." I stepped aside, letting her in. She hesitated, then sat on the edge of the bed. I leaned against the dresser, arms folded. I forced myself to stare at her, to really see how the months of guilt and shame had changed her. Her cheeks were hollow, eyes red-rimmed. She'd lost weight. She looked older. She exhaled. "I haven't heard from him in a few days, not since I told him not to contact me. He's out of my life, John. I told him we're done. I swear it." Her voice quivered. "But I know that might not matter to you now." I stood there, letting her words sink in, searching her face for any hint of deceit. She seemed earnest. "So now he's gone," I said. "And you think we can rewind the clock?" "No," she whispered. "I just can't live in this limbo anymore. It's killing me. And it's killing you too." She paused, swallowing. "I know you can't forgive me. I know you hate me. I understand. But maybe you can find it in your heart to give me a chance to be better." I closed my eyes. My chest squeezed. "Sarah, every time I look at you, I see you with him. I see your body that isn't mine anymore." She let out a sob. "You say that, but it was never about my body. It was about everything I couldn't say to you. I was lonely, John. I was restless and stupid and—" Thunder cracked, interrupting us. I barked out a laugh, harsh and bitter. "You want pity? After what you did? "No," she said, tears sliding down her cheeks. "I just want a shred of hope. If not for us, then for our daughter. Please." I walked to the window, peering at the sheets of rain. The reflection of my own face flickered in the glass, a man I didn't recognize. "Sometimes," I said quietly, "I think the worst part is that you didn't even care enough to hide it better. You left that note for me to find, left the phone calls for me to overhear, like you were screaming for me to notice." She swallowed. "I wanted to be caught, because I was too much of a coward to tell you what I was feeling." I turned, faced her. "Now you want me to wave a magic wand, say it's all good." She shook her head miserably. "I know you can't." I exhaled, a sound as hollow as I felt. "Then what do you want from me?" Her eyes locked on mine. "I just want you to talk to me. Even if you decide to end this marriage, fine. But don't lock me out in silence. Let's face it like adults. Decide what's next. Is it divorce? Separation? Do we try counseling? Anything?" I laughed bitterly. "Counseling? That's rich, coming from a woman who was getting personal therapy from that coach." She flinched, tears streaking her face. I swallowed, forcing myself not to yield. My chest pounded with that old, familiar ache. "But you're right, we can't keep living in limbo." Her eyes flashed with a flicker of hope. I crushed it. "I'm done with you," I said softly. "I'll stay in this house for our daughter's sake, but we're finished as a couple. If you want to file for divorce, fine. If you want to keep living under the same roof, fine. But you're a stranger to me now, Sarah." She hunched forward, sobbing. I expected some wave of pity or empathy to wash over me, but I felt only a faint pulse of sadness overshadowed by emptiness. I let her cry. When she finally lifted her face, eyes hollow, I said, "If you prefer to move out, do it. If not, I won't stop you from staying here, but don't expect anything from me. No love, no gentle words, no forgiveness." That part of me died. She choked on another sob. "You can't just be dead inside forever." "I can," I said, "and I will." "You made sure of that." Then, feeling something snap inside me, some final chain that used to tether me to hope, I said, "Get out of my room." She stood, trembling, tears drenching her face. For a moment, I thought she might speak again, but she just shook her head, turned, and left. The moment the door closed, a wave of physical pain seized me, so intense I had to drop onto the bed. I pressed a hand to my chest, gasping. It felt like my body was punishing me for the coldness I'd shown, the unstoppable rage, the heartbreak. But I didn't call for help. I endured, alone. That was the night I effectively ended our marriage. I wish I could say I felt immediate relief, but relief came in small increments. In the days that followed, Sarah slunk around the house like a ghost. I continued ignoring her attempts at conversation beyond the bare minimum. Our daughter sensed the huge shift, but at least there were no more shouting matches. It was an eerie calm, the kind you get after a tornado has flattened everything in sight. We kept living that way for weeks. She moved out of the master bedroom officially, turned the office into her own space. We passed each other in the kitchen like roommates who disliked each other but had to split the rent. We rarely spoke, and if we did, it was about mundane practicalities, our daughter's school schedule, picking up groceries, paying the bills. I felt freer, in a twisted sense. The brutal anger that used to ride me had subsided to a cold plateau. Sometimes, though, the memories stabbed me in the dark. I'd recall the sight of them in bed, her arching under him, or the note in asterisk Solaris asterisk, or the phone call that made my daughter ask, "Dad, who is this?" And the physical pain would jolt through my chest again, like an electric shock. I'd grit my teeth, ride it out. In the morning, I'd function. At night, I'd read or stare at the ceiling until sleep claimed me. She never left the house, though. Perhaps she didn't have the courage to move out. Perhaps she wanted to keep some illusion of family alive for our daughter's sake. Maybe she had nowhere else to go. I stopped caring about her reasons. If she wanted to exist in the margins of my life, so be it. I was done bleeding for her betrayal. Richard, from what I could tell, stayed away, or she at least avoided any calls from him in my presence. Once, I found her phone buzzing on the kitchen counter. His name flashed on the screen. I didn't touch it, just walked away. A part of me was curious, but a bigger part found it irrelevant. She was free to pick up or ignore. None of it mattered. Nothing could resurrect what died between us. Over time, our daughter asked fewer questions. She adapted in that heartbreaking way children do. She talked to each of us separately, as though we were on different continents. I made sure she felt safe, assured her I wasn't leaving her side. Sarah tried as well, in her own guilt-ridden manner. But even our daughter sensed that the rift was irreparable. One day, out of the blue, Sarah cornered me in the hallway. She looked fragile, eyes ringed with shadows, voice small. She asked, "Is there truly no chance for us to heal?" I looked at her, remembering every lie, every betrayal. My voice sounded foreign to my own ears when I said, "I'm living after you, Sarah. That's all there is." She nodded slowly, as though I'd confirmed her worst fear. Then she turned away. And that's where we are now, if the court will indulge me. I'm a man with a heartbeat, but no illusions, sharing a roof with the woman who betrayed me. Each day feels like a final act in a play that won't end. No screaming, no savage accusations, just the bleak quiet of two people who stand on opposite sides of a chasm. She tries to inch close. I refuse to bridge that gap. We coexist for the sake of our daughter. Maybe that's enough. Maybe one day she'll decide to leave for good, or maybe I will. But for now, we remain locked in this uneasy arrangement. Husband and wife in name, strangers in spirit. There's an old closet upstairs in the bedroom that used to be ours. Now it stands half empty. Most of her clothes are gone. She keeps a few items there, maybe out of habit. Sometimes, when I pass by, I see that bent wire hanger, swaying in the stale air. I think about how once that closet overflowed with her presence. Bright fabrics, floral scents, an invitation to intimacy. Now it's just a hollow space that echoes with memories of what we used to share. She might still have the same body I once knew, but it's no more familiar to me than a reflection in shattered glass. And the scariest part isn't the betrayal itself. No, it's something colder, darker. It's the numbness that's taken hold of me, the realization that I can't remember how it felt to love her. That's the real tragedy, the absence of feeling, the quiet acceptance that there's nothing left between us. No hatred, no longing, not even disgust. Just indifference. I keep living, breathing, functioning. Work, dinner, an occasional conversation with my daughter about her school projects. Life moves on, as it always does. Some nights, I wake up with that stabbing ache in my chest, a physical reminder that heartbreak isn't just in the mind. It roots itself in your flesh, your bones, your heartbeat. But I press a palm to my ribs, force myself to breathe, and wait for it to pass. Eventually, it subsides, and then I'm left with a quiet sense of relief, of emptiness, of freedom. Yes, freedom. Because in a twisted way, once love turns to dust, you're free of all illusions. You can see the world clearly, maybe too clearly. You keep going, but you don't pretend. You learn how to talk and walk and function, all while your heart stands aside, silent. And maybe that's what scares her the most, not my rage, but my apathy. She might wander the rooms of this house, hoping to find a spark of forgiveness. She won't, because when I said I'm living after her, I meant it literally. The man I was before is gone. The life I had with her is buried. I'm here, but I'm not here. So I wait. If she leaves, I won't stop her. If she stays, I won't open my arms. I'll just remain, day after day, taking slow, careful breaths, ignoring the occasional flare of pain in my chest, and reminding myself that some wounds can't be healed. They become part of who you are. And that's my final truth. I live after her, and I feel nothing. Nothing at all.